Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our presentation of Burnside Unbound, where we bring our author events to you. Today, we are doing something very different and very special. I'm so excited to bring you two well-known people in the picture book creators world, Jane Jolly and Sally Heinrich. A big welcome firstly to you, Jane.
Thanks, Kate, and hello to everyone that's watching and listening, and a special hello to anyone at Eastern Fleurieu School who has tuned in.
And a big welcome to Sally Heinrich.
Hi everyone. It's really weird saying hello and not knowing who I'm saying hello to, but yeah, nice to be here.
Thank you. Now, equally important is our wonderful audience out there. This is the first time that Burnside Unbound have invited school classes to join in on our webinars. So welcome to all the students who are watching from their classrooms this afternoon. A very big and special thank you to Jane and Sally, who were prepared to invite classes into this creator discussion. I'd like to make a very special mention of your teachers and teacher librarians who value and promote books and reading in your classes. Students, please give your teachers a little clap for investing in your love of reading, art, language, and giving you opportunities like this to explore what it means to create books. So thank you, teachers. Now, one other little message for our teachers is that we would really encourage you to type any questions you have from your students in the Q&A box that's at the bottom of the screen. And if you can't see it, just let the mouse hover over the bottom of the screen and it will pop up. We would also really love you to mention which school you're zooming in from today so that we know who's listening in. So, Jane and Sally. First question I'll ask is for Sally. The two of you have collaborated on quite a few beautiful picture books throughout your careers. And for those of you who are new to your work, could you please tell us which picture books you've worked on together?
Okay, so the first book that Jane and I worked on together was this one, Step at a Time. The second one was Papa Skye. And we've recently finished Mama Ocean, which will be coming out in September. So she's, as you can see, she's a companion to Papa Skye.
Great, thank you very much. Just gonna flick over. And Jane, our students listening in today often have to work in pairs on a task. So what makes you two such a successful collaboration? And what advice would you give to our students who have to work together in pairs?
Okay, so firstly, I can't illustrate. I can write, but I can't illustrate. And so Sally just finishes off the book. You know, I can do the words, she can do the pictures. And I'm pretty happy with just about all of her illustrations. I say all of her illustrations that she does. And often she'll send me a sample and say, what do you think of this? And I go, it's wonderful, it's great, I love it. And then she'll take it back and send me a different one and say, what about this one? I like this one. But I'll go, yes, I love it, I love it. So honestly, all of Sally's work is just brilliant. And we do know each other very well. And we just talk and discuss and show and share, and we're always ready to change and adapt if we have to. So that, I think that's the big thing, is that in that part of the collaboration is you have to be prepared to listen and to adapt and change where necessary to make the best book possible. That's what you're both working towards, is to make the most beautiful book that you can.
Yeah, that's
right. Can I just add to that?
Please.
Yeah, I think what Jane said last is probably the most important thing. You know, because we know each other so well, we can be really honest with each other. And I think it's both of us are willing to make changes if the other one, you know, makes a suggestion, so we don't get all, you know, well, we might get hurt and offended, but we, you know, then we sort of get over ourselves and get back. But, you know, yeah, as Jane said, it's, you know, the book is the most important thing. So the fact that we can you know, to and fro between us, I think is really important, you know, that we can, yeah, so it's a real collaboration rather than the text. You know, sometimes I'll illustrate a story and the text will be sort of set in stone, and I just make the best that I can of what I've got. And I mean, that's fine too, but I just think, yeah, it's better the way that we can work.
Excellent, thank you. So
I
a few of our,
just add something? Can
sorry,
I just add something? It's not usual that the illustrator and the author work together. Quite often an author will send a manuscript off to a publisher, they will organise the illustrator, and you may never see the illustrations until the book is finished, or if you're lucky you may see a few of the early roughs, but it's not normal that so when you see collaborative pairs, they're kind of the not the usual pair, you know, not the usual way of producing a book.
Because the publisher often sources the illustrator, is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, yeah.
So we've had a few schools just say hi to you all. We've got Meadows Primary School listening in. We have Eastern Fleurieu, 2 classes, and Ranella Primary. Michaela from Ranella Primary asks, do you like writing books and why?
Okay, so I'll answer that to start with, but Sally also is an author, so she might want to answer it as well. But I love writing stories, and even better is when someone thinks that they're good enough to be made into a book. I have probably 400 stories in my computer, and of those only 10 have been published as books. So I love writing, I keep writing, I write all the time, and if a publisher doesn't want it, I'll either work harder on it and resubmit it, or just say, okay, they don't like that, I'm going to write a bigger and better story next time, and so I continue on. So I just love writing, and I've loved writing from when I was a little kid. I was always writing stories, and I loved the time at school when we did creative writing. I always loved that. So, but to see your story published as a book is the ultimate.
Yeah, absolutely. And Tamara has asked, where do you get your ideas from?
Everywhere. In fact, just at the moment, I've just started a story about some magpies, because we have 2 magpies coming in and we are feeding them, even though I've looked up all the bird sites that say you shouldn't really, but it's good fun. So, and I heard that, you know, magpies mate for life, but if one dies, another male will go in very quickly and become the stepfather. And I thought that sounds like a fantastic idea. So I get ideas all over the place, and I have notebooks in my bags and I'm always jotting ideas down. I have scraps of paper in the car, and there's always a pen or a pencil in the car. And sometimes if I'm driving, I'll say to my daughter or my husband, quick, just write this down, and they'll write it down for me, and then I'll take that little scrap of paper inside. Sometimes it works out to be a story, and sometimes I just don't act on it.
Yeah, that's true. I think ideas are everywhere. I'm always, you know, and some ideas go somewhere, some don't. But yeah, just you know, walking down the street and looking at people and thinking, oh, I wonder where they're going, and I wonder what they're doing. I've sort of asked, I think I'm just really nosy, you know, and if I see someone and I'm interested in them and I'm curious about them and I can't know who they are or what they're doing, you know, I just make something up, you know.
I think you hit it on the nail, Sally. Authors are nosy.
Yeah. Professional sticky beaks.
Yeah.
Yeah, nosy and notices.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah.
Notice,
Yeah.
that's a very important thing, yeah.
Yeah.
So while we're talking about ideas, Year 2 at Westlakes Shore Primary would like to know where you came up with the idea for Papa Skye in particular.
Okay, well, I'll start that one, and then maybe Sally can talk about her idea for what Papa Skye would look like. So I'll just hold Papa Skye up for those people who haven't seen it. So I was actually listening to Radio National one day, which is what you do when you're 60 years old and more, and I heard them talk about a cloud forest. And I honestly had never heard of a cloud forest before. So I imagined a forest made up of trees that had little puffy clouds all over them, white little clouds. And I thought, oh, that would be so gorgeous for a story. So I Googled cloud forests and found out that, in fact, they are one of the most endangered forests in the world that rely on the clouds to provide the moisture, to provide the tree to grow, have fruit, nuts, and to keep the animals alive. So that's where it started from. So, you know, I'd never heard of a cloud forest before. And then just this vision came into my head.
Sorry, Jane, I'll just interrupt you momentarily, yeah, sure, because Sally's showing a picture, but she needs to talk in order for the others to see.
Oh,
she's got a cloud forest there.
Okay.
That she's included.
Yeah.
So Sally, make a noise so the camera goes to you.
Here's Papa Skye in the cloud forest. Yeah.
Okay, sorry about that, Jane. Please continue.
I forgot.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. Yeah, we're just getting used to this dual zooming. So I imagined that somewhere at the top of the mountains there was someone who was in control of the clouds and shaping them and sending them off around the world. And that's where the idea came from. But I didn't know how to end the story. And I knew that there had to be something happen to change things. And I was driving home one day from Goolwa back to Strathalbyn, and it was really, really windy, and the wind nearly blew my little car off the road. And it just came to me, oh my gosh, that's it. The wind's going to blow Papa Skye off the mountain and he'll go down, and then the others can help him come up. So that's where that idea of the story came from. And then if Sally wants to talk about her ideas for the gorgeous Papa Skye, who I love.
I actually haven't got my initial sketches to show, but yeah, it took me a long time to get Papa Skye right. When I first got Jane's story, the first thing I started doing was researching cloud forests, because I didn't know anything much about cloud forests either. And I really like learning something when I'm illustrating a book, and it was really exciting learning about all the different animals that live in cloud forests. So there were all...
There you go.
Are you there? You're back? Sorry, my battery's low.
You're back.
Yeah, but learning about all the different animals in cloud forests. So there were, you know, animals I knew like tigers and toucans, but there were also kinkajous and coatis and the Mexican hairy porcupine, and so I did lots of research finding out about all the different animals that lived in the cloud forest. And yeah, I struggled getting Papa Skye right for a long time. I drew lots and lots. I must have drawn hundreds of versions of Papa Skye before I got to the one that was finally in the book. Yeah.
Oh, he's lovely. We've got a few people wanting to ask a couple of questions. So, hi, Mrs. Jolly, room 28 and Melindilla are watching your books.
Hi there.
And Ellie from Ranella is wondering, how did you two become friends?
Okay. Perhaps I'll start answering that one. There's a group of South Australian published authors called Echidnas, and they used to have meetings. And so one night I went along to one of the meetings, and Sally happened to be there, and we got chatting, and we realised that we had mutual friends, and it just kind of went from there. And then we would meet each other at other events, and then we started sort of having a catch up on a weekend, and you know, with our mutual friends, and so it went from there. So there are quite a few sort of public events that authors in South Australia can get together at. And then, of course, there are events in Australia like the Children's Book Council of Australia have every 2 years. They have a fantastic conference. And so Sally and I started heading off to those together and sharing rooms. So we got to know each other really well.
That's great. Thank you. Eddie from Ranella is wondering, which book has been the most popular of the ones that you've collaborated with, together with?
I would say One Step at a Time, because that was an honour book in the Pitch Book of the Year Awards. So yeah, I think that's probably so far the most successful.
Okay.
Yeah, I would agree. This one sold really well, and like Sam said, it got an honour award. And we've also sent it to quite a few places overseas. We went to Cambodia to a conference down at Kampot, and we took copies with us there. So whenever we're able to connect with people where there are landmines, we've managed to sort of either post them or send them over with people who are travelling that way. So it has gone to a lot of places. It's also come out in, what other language? Spanish. It's come out in Spanish.
Oh, and Chinese.
And Chinese.
Spanish,
yeah. So yeah, that's definitely the most popular one.
Yeah. Well, while we're talking about One Step at a Time, would you like to read a little bit from the first couple of pages?
Yeah, sure.
Or did you choose something and another part perhaps?
I thought I'd just choose the first page to set the scene. Sally, have you got the book with you? Maybe if you hold that first page up. No, you haven't? Yeah.
Yes, I have.
If you can hold that first page up, then I'll just read. Thanks. High in the mountains, Luck and his grandmother worked hard at dragging timber from the forest. It was heavy work, and they looked forward to the day when their baby elephant Marley would be able to help them haul the heavy loads. Luck was Marley's keeper, but he loved her like a sister. Marley was never far from Luck. One day, Marley was foraging for her breakfast. Overhead, monkeys chattered like excited children. Marley raised her trunk and stepped forward to reach for the sweetest bananas.
Now I've just got to make a noise so that you can see the picture. Yep. And then,
boom.
Oh, yes, boom.
Boom.
So that's quite a strong image there, Sally. One of the students from, and I can't see which school they're from, but they're asking you, what do you use to create these illustrations?
Okay, so I work in using different art mediums, but for One Step at a Time, I use Lino Prints. So what you do with Lino Prints is you do a drawing on a piece of lino, which is, you sometimes see it on floors in kitchens, but this is a special one that's made for artists. And then I carve away all of the background. So all of the parts of the illustration that I don't want to be there. So everything I don't want to be black, I carve away. And then I use a roller with ink and roll it over the surface of the block, and then I print it. So it's a bit like a giant stamp. And so I can make as many copies of each illustration as I want to using the printing process, but then I use watercolour paints to colour it in. And so then those final coloured images are scanned and made into the book. So that's the way I've done One Step at a Time. With Papa Skye, I've used watercolour. So I've drawn my drawing with a pencil outline to start with, then I've painted it with watercolour, and then I've used lead pencils over the top of the watercolour to do the shading and the details. So that's the two main techniques that I use for illustrating picture books.
Mm. So Jane, you'll just need to make a little noise there so everybody can see.
Okay, yeah, I'm just showing Papa Skye.
Just before he falls.
Yeah.
Oh, that's lovely. A question for both of you, and Jane, if you'd like to start. What is your favourite book of all time?
Oh.
As of one that I've read or one that I've written?
Let's do both.
Okay, so my favourite book of all time that I have read, and it's probably not a book that primary kids would read, but it was, oh gosh, oh, it's a famous book. Oh, what's it called?
You've forgotten the name.
I have to come back, yeah, come back to me. and it will come to me. I know the one I'm thinking of, I just can't think of the title.
Well, I think,
yeah, Danica at Sterling East has asked, what's the favourite book you've written? So perhaps we'll answer that one first.
Okay, so I think I really like Papa Skye out of all the books that I've written, yeah. And I guess before the illustrations came along, you know, I had the story, but the illustrations have just added to it so much. So I would say Papa Skye, yep.
Okay, and
so it's a little bit like choosing between your favourite children. It's a little bit like choosing your favourite child, because you know, they're all sort of special in one way. But I think actually my favourite is Mama Ocean at the moment, because because it's new and I'm excited about it. And you know, I always look at my books, you know, once they've been published, and I can see things that are wrong with them. I can pick little mistakes and little things that I haven't really drawn. I think I could draw them a bit better if I did them again. So I haven't quite got to that stage yet with Mama Ocean. You know, I'm still pretty happy with everything, but yeah, after a little while I'll start picking fault and finding things that I'm not happy with, yeah. And as far as favourite books, one of my very, very favourite all-time picture books is Fox by Margaret Wilde and Ron Brooks. That's an absolutely beautiful book. And then another book, and it's interesting because it's the same writer and illustrator, and it's a really different book, is Old Pig. So same writer, same illustrator, but completely different illustration style. And I think that's, you know, it's because it's the story is the important thing. So you can't just, you know, as you notice with Pup Skye and One Step at a Time, I've used completely different techniques. And it's a matter of choosing the style of illustration that's going to best suit the story, yeah. And Old Pig, I cannot read that book without crying, even though I know what's going to happen. I've read it hundreds of times. I just can't get to the end without absolutely bawling.
Yeah, and there's so much joy in reading a story twice, 3 times. We pick up on things that we haven't noticed the first few times. So, yeah, I don't know if you've found that with books you've read.
Yeah, absolutely. And I always hide things in my illustrations too. So I hope that, you know, when people come back to them, they'll, you know, each time they read it, they might notice something in the illustrations that they haven't noticed the first time. Yeah.
So for our classes who are listening out there, should there be something that we should look for in Papa Skye or Mama Ocean when we get to read that one?
Well, actually, in Papa Skye, there is something that you might not notice. When I'd just about finished the illustrations for this book, and one of my friends was reading a book called The Weather Makers, which is all about climate change. And she told me about a golden toad. So it's this tiny little toad that was the first animal that was identified to have become extinct because of climate change. And the golden toad lived in cloud forests in Costa Rica. So I thought, I have to put this toad into my pictures. So even though most of them are finished, I went back to them and I hid the golden toad in the illustrations, and just have to get it so the light's not on it. So on the first page, there's a tiny little golden toad hidden at the bottom of the page. And in all the illustrations, there's a golden toad up until Papa Skye falls. Well, it's there when Papa Skye falls down, but then all the clouds go away and then the toad disappears as well. So that's something that you probably wouldn't notice it unless you knew it was there. So.
Thank you. I'm sure there's going to be a lineup for looking at Papa Skye and see if they can find these golden toads.
Yeah.
Now, the questions are coming thick and fast, so I do apologise in advance if I don't get to everybody's question, but a couple from Sterling East Primary. How long did it take to write Papa Skye? And that's from Ailey.
Okay, so from when I got the first idea to when the story was completely finished and ready to share with Sally and Anna Solding was probably 2 years, because I like to leave a story for a while. So I'll write it and then leave it, and then write it and then leave it, and then write it and then leave it, so that it gives you some time to go away from it and come back with fresh eyes. And that's something that I try and instill in kids when they're doing some story writing, is to just leave it for a while and come back to it a week later and see what it sounds like when you start reading it after you haven't seen it for a couple of weeks. So yeah, it was probably 2 years before it then went to Sally for illustrating.
Okay. And this is a question from Bonnie. How old were you both when you started writing?
Okay, I'll answer that one. As soon as I could pick up a pencil, probably 5.
5. And what about you, Sally?
Yeah, I was the same. I used to actually make, I'd forgotten about this for a long time, but when I was first started learning to write, I used to make little books and give them to my friends. So, yeah, for as long as I can remember. Yeah. And even before that, you know, I used to draw before I could write, and my sister would, who was much older than me, would ask me what was happening in the pictures, and she'd write down the little story behind the pictures on the drawings. Yeah.
Well, that's lovely to have a conspirer in the family who was supporting you along with your talents. And
absolutely.
So the year 4s at St George College, what inspired Jane Jolly to start writing, obviously as soon as you could pick up a pen?
Yeah, I just always started writing little stories, and I guess part of that was because I loved reading. And as a kid, we always had a story at night time. Mum or Dad would read a story. Often it was Dad. So we always had a story in bed right up until I was probably, I don't know, maybe 11. And also my dad was a storyteller, so he could tell stories without reading from books. And he had a favourite one that we used to always ask for again and again and again. And so I've always loved reading and loved listening to stories. And so when I seriously came to writing one that I wanted to get published, I said to myself, after seeing all the books in the shops, I can do better than some of those. Well, it wasn't quite as easy as I thought it was going to be. So it took a long time before one of my stories was accepted for publication.
And even one step at a time, that wasn't easy to get that out there. Would you like to give us a quick background of actually publishing one step at a time?
Yeah, sure. So I wrote one step at a time, and I was sending it out to publishers through an agent, and no one wanted it. And it went out for maybe 2 years to lots of different publishers. And finally, I heard about the group in South Australia who support the anti-landmines, and I thought maybe they would have some money. And I sent it to them and said, you know, would you like to publish this? And they said, look, we'd love to, but we don't have any money. And then I showed it to Sally, and she said she would love to illustrate it. And I said, I would love you to illustrate it, but we need to find a publisher. And no kidding, only a week later, I reckon, in the Advertiser, there was an article about a new publisher in South Australia called Anna Solding from Midnight Sun Publishing. So I contacted her. We met her at Chocolat coffee shop, and Sally showed her some of her Lino prints that she'd done for other work. I showed her the manuscript, and Anna loved it straight away, but said she'd never published a picture book before and she didn't have the funds, because they cost about $30,000 to publish a picture book. So
wow.
A lot
of money.
So we decided to do some crowdfunding for $10,000 of that. So we set up a crowdfunding page. And for those not familiar with that, you have to set a goal and a time limit, and you have to get that money within the time limit. If you don't make it, you don't get any of the money. But we got the money, and so we were able to go on with the book. Yeah. And that's the book that ended up getting an honour award at the CBCA.
That's right. So a shaky start, but a very successful book. So congratulations to you both on that one. One of the students is asking about how you use language, and I think this question can be directed at both of you. All of your books have the most amazing describing words. Do you find or think of the describing words? And why do you think it is important to use so many adjectives?
Well, perhaps I'll start with that because my favourite book is a thesaurus, but now I use thesaurus.com on the internet, and I also have little notebooks where I collect words. So for every story that I've done, I've had a notebook where I've collected words. So I just make lists and lists and lists of words, and they go on and on and on, and lots of words, lots of synonyms, and often I might have, 30 words, but I'll only use one out of that list. So I'm really picking and choosing my best word. I also really make an effort to use some similes and metaphors, and also some alliteration to add to the book. So I do work very hard on choosing those words, and Sally will probably add a bit to that too, because she's also an author.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess that's the thing with a picture book especially, isn't it? Because there's so few words in a picture book, so every word is really important. And it's not just the meaning of the word that's important, it's the sound of the word, because picture books are designed to be read aloud. So the sound of the words and the sound of the language is just as important as what it means, and it's the way that it rolls off the tongue, and sometimes it can be different. It's really important when you're writing picture books to read them aloud as you're writing them and editing them, because, sometimes it'll sound, when you read it in your head, it can be really good, but then it's different when you read it aloud and you're actually listening to it, in the way that, it rolls off the tongue is different. I just wanted to say too, in picture books are really interesting because there's sort of two languages going on simultaneously, because there's the visual storytelling as well as the verbal storytelling. And as an illustrator, I think it's really important that that the pictures and the words aren't doing the same thing necessarily all the time, that the pictures are sort of adding to the text and extending the text and adding more to the story than is there in the words. So, and I think, and that's a language as well.
Yeah, and I guess that's why for a picture book author, there's no need to say he stood in his red coat, because the illustrator could draw that. If you really wanted it to be read, the illustrator could draw that. If it's really important to the story, then you would keep it in. And the other thing is that you can use amazing vocab in picture books, because like Sally said, picture books are designed actually for adults to read aloud to children. So if you've got big words in there, it's fantastic, because it's a way of kids coming across new words and extending their vocab. So I'm not afraid of putting new words and big words and words that perhaps people think, oh, that shouldn't be in a 5-year-old's picture book. An adult's going to read it to them, and if it's in the story, it's going to make sense.
Now, lots of our listeners and viewers are busting to hear about Mama Ocean. So would you like to share a little bit about Mama Ocean without giving too much away?
Sure. I'll show the front cover and the end papers. And if you haven't guessed by now that green is Sally's favourite colour. And I'll read the first 2 pages, I think, because that will just give you an appetite for it. So, Mama Ocean rose from the seabed like an emerald fountain. Her tresses tumbled and trailed through the tides. My children, she called, gather near, and so they came. But Mama Ocean was sad. The creatures stared at her, distressed.
Ooh.
And so there's a problem with Mama Ocean, and the creatures have to solve the problem. So,
and what was your inspiration for Mama Ocean?
Sorry?
What was your inspiration for Mother Ocean?
Oh, well, when we did Papa Skye, there was the idea of doing the trilogy of Papa Skye, Papa Ocean and Papa Earth. But when we got together with Anna and talked about it, the 3 papas didn't gel. So we decided to have Mama Ocean. And I actually went through my original manuscript and just took out all the papas and put Mama in, and it just didn't work. So then the story was rewritten, so to be Mama Ocean, and it was sort of the follow-on from Papa Skye, the sky, the ocean, and then the third in the trilogy, which, shall we tell them?
Or maybe we can wait a little bit because we've still got a few questions
so.
about Mama Ocean.
Yeah, we might wait a little bit for a certain person to come on.
When can we buy Mama Ocean?
Sometime in September it's going into the shop. Sally, do you know the actual date in September?
I maybe the 1st of September. I'm not 100% sure, but I think it's very early in the 1st of September. Yeah. And we're hoping that we are going to be able to have a launch for it. So, and we will be publicising that if it happens. I mean, no one knows what's going to happen these days, but if we possibly can, we will be launching it probably in about the middle of September.
And there's a question, when did you write Mama Ocean?
So Mama Ocean was written pretty soon after Papa Skye came out. So once again, I probably worked a bit less on this one. It was probably a year of working on it and leaving it and coming back to it and making changes, because obviously I had to change from Papa Ocean to Mama Ocean, and that changed the whole story. And there were quite a few changes that went through that manuscript this time.
Yeah, we had a lot of toing and froing. And then, of course, so yeah, I feel like we've been working on it for a very long time, because it took me about a year to do the illustrations. So it's not quick working on a picture book. And I was going to say, it wasn't a year non-stop, but I would say at least 6 months of work. If I hadn't been doing anything else in between, you know, it would have taken 6 months of, you know, going to work every day and just working on Papa Skye. So it's a pretty slow process. So picture book authors have to be very patient while they wait for the picture book illustrators to finish the job.
Can I just show something?
Please.
When it was going to be Papa Skye,
Papa Ocean.
Papa Ocean, Sally had done this illustration. And then, of course, it became Mama. So he went, where did he go, Sally? Where did Papa Ocean go to? Somewhere in your filing system?
Somewhere.
Yes. If you think about other artists, you know, it can take years to put together an exhibition. So it's very similar, isn't it, Sally, that this is essentially an exhibition of your work all between two covers?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely.
Lots of hard work there. So lots of people are asking about a new book and what are you working on at the moment? And let me find this question from Cooper at Stirling East, who would like to know what is your next book going to be called?
So, hello, Cooper. I know Cooper's dad. So, Cooper, our next book, if you've got a mama and a papa, you're going to have a bubba maybe. So our next book is Bubba Earth. So we're working on that now. So that'll still be a couple of years away, but it's going to be very exciting to finish off the trilogy. So Bubba Earth, so it'll be different.
Yeah, well, we're very excited to see that when it comes out, but it will be a little bit of a wait, but that's okay.
Yeah. Always worth
it.
Sorry, Sally, go on.
No, that's all right. I was just saying, I can't start working on Bubba Earth because I'm actually working on my own picture book at the moment, which is going to be called The Rainbow Thieves, and that's taking me a very long time because it's about 3 times as long as a normal picture book. So there's 3 times as many illustrations. So I can't work on anything else until I finish that.
Okay, so The Rainbow Thieves. Can we have a little sneak peek into the storyline, or is that a bit cheeky?
A little bit, yeah. I won't say too much about it at the moment, but it's sort of self-explanatory in a way. Yeah, someone's stolen all the rainbows. So if you think about what might happen, what the world might be like if there were no rainbows. Yeah, and then there's a young girl who goes on a quest to find them and bring them back into the world again.
Fantastic. Well, thank you all so much. What I might do is just do a little wrap up, and for those classes who can stay and listen to a few more questions, please feel free to stay on the webinar. But I just want to take this opportunity to say a very big thank you to Jane and Sally. It's been so wonderful chatting with you both today. And thank you for taking the time out of your busy creating schedules to Zoom into our classrooms.
Thank you, and thanks to everyone who registered and got onto the Zoom, and I hope you've all enjoyed it and learnt a little bit more about what goes behind a picture book. So it was lovely to be here, and thank you, Kate, for organising it.
Pleasure. And Sally, thank you.
Yeah, same. Thanks to everyone. It's just a shame I can't see you all, but I hope that you have got something out of it.
And to our listeners, thank you very much for joining us online. And I hope that you've enjoyed your time with Jane and Sally today. Again, thank you to our teachers who've prioritised literacy in your busy curriculum schedules. And for those of you who are interested in other events that we've got coming up on Burnside Unbound, keep checking our website. But we've got a very special thing happening on Sunday, the 20th of September. And we're helping to launch a new picture book called Esmerelda's Nest, and this book is written by Robert Moore and illustrated by Mandy Foote, so that'll be something to look forward to. So thank you all so much for zooming in today, and we hope to see you again for another event at Burnside Library. But if you can stay around, I will ask Jane and Sally a few more questions, but we know that life in a school is busy, so thank you all very much for joining us. So back to Jane and Sally. Questions have come in on the side. How do you know the illustrator will be the right person for your book?
Good question.
Oh, okay. Well, I knew with Sally that it would be because I'd seen her work and knew her work, but some of my other books that have been sent off to publishers, they've actually chosen the illustrator and I've had no choice. So you just have to put your faith in the publisher that they're going to choose someone that their style will suit the style of your story. And I've been really, really lucky that all of my other picture books have had magnificent illustrators as well that have really suited the style of the book. So I guess you put your faith in the publisher. And I knew of Sally's work and knew that basically whatever she did, it would be fantastic.
Thank you.
So Riley from Eastern Fleurieu School wants to know how many books that both of you have actually written. So Jane, how many have you had published?
I've had, I think 9 or 10 now of picture books published. Yeah.
Books, yep. And Sally?
I've illustrated about 40, and out of those I've written, I think it's 9 of my own. So 4 of them were picture books, but I've also done some non-fiction books and a novel as well.
Fantastic. So a few people have just written in with a couple of comments. So thank you so much from Westlake Shore. We feel very lucky to be able to talk with an author and an illustrator. Robert Moore was listening in as well. So he says, congratulations.
We know Robert.
Jane, Sally and Kate, lovely to watch and listen to you. Room 28.
Hi.
Is it hard to write a book, Mrs. Jolly?
It's hard in some ways. I think it's harder to actually get it published. I think the writing for me, I love it and I work hard at it, but it just flows for me. I mean, obviously I've got to go back over and do all the editing and make it better and not send it off until it's the best that I can actually do. I think the hardest part is finding a publisher to actually turn it into a book.
And Sally, do you find that as well?
Yeah, pretty well. I mean, actually, right. Sometimes it's easier than others, you know, and it's never the first draft that finds its way into a finished book. You know, there's a lot of work goes in behind the scenes that you never see. It's the same for the illustrations too. I mean, I don't just sit down and do the illustrations straight off. I do lots of roughs. I make lots of scribbles. I make a lot of mess. You know, I might draft one illustration, you know, over and over 15 or 20 times before I get to the final one. So, there is a lot of work, but so easy, you know, some days it's easy, some days it's harder, but, you know, I still think I'm very lucky that that's what I get to do as a job.
I reckon. Well, one of our listeners has actually asked you, Sally, could you please draw us a picture right now? How about I put you on the spot?
Oh, what would they like me to draw? I don't know if I should ask what they'd like me to draw. That might be, I'll have to run off and get some paper.
Okay. So while you're doing that, we will ask Jane a couple of questions. Isaac's wondering, what type of pencil do you write with? Or do you use a pen or do you type?
Oh, that's a really good question, because when I do all of my work in my notebooks, I use a pencil, and really it could be any pencil. There's an HB pencil. Just recently, my lovely brother gave me a Stapler pencil that's got all replaceable leads in it. So I have used that a bit. But I do all the work in my notebooks in pencil first, then I type onto the computer, and then I print them off and then edit and print and edit and print and edit. So yeah, just an ordinary pencil in my notebook and then straight onto the computer. And look, Sally's got a pencil and paper now.
Yeah,
so pen and paper. I'm just trying to decide what to draw.
While she's letting her creative flow go, we'll take the camera off her so she can relax. How do you feel when you write a book? This is another question from one of our viewers.
Oh, look, I feel really excited because I love writing so much, and as I can see the story develop, and when I go back over and I edit it, and then I make a sentence that's just perfect, that I think this is the one I've been waiting for. It's really exciting. I find it really exciting. And to get to the end and to read back over and print it and edit and print it and edit, and then you get to the point where I don't think I can make any more changes to this, and then I might leave it for a while. And then when I finally get to the point after a few months of this is it, that's the really exciting part. And then I send it off to my agent, and I guess the exciting bit then is if it comes back with a yes, but that doesn't happen very often when I think I've got 400 stories and I don't know, 10 books. A 1 in 40 strike rate.
It's a tricky experience. So we've got a quick question from St. Mary's College from Evie, Poppy and Miller. What is your favourite illustration in any of your books?
Oh, that's an interesting question. Favourite illustration in any of my books? I've never answered that question before. I can't think. Actually, I do know what, I can think of one answer, but I haven't got the book with me. Actually, do you know what? I'll tell you, one of my favourites is In One Step at a Time. There was one illustration in this book in particular that I found really, really difficult. And it was actually this one. And I found it really difficult to get this illustration right. I'd done all the other illustrations in the book, and this was the very last one I did because I couldn't get it right. And so I left it till last. And I was really struggling to get the monks walking on the path through the forest. And I actually got to the point where I thought, this is just too hard, I can't do it. And I went back to the text and I thought, I'm going to draw something different because this is just too hard. And then I read the text and it said, in the evening as the sun bled into the sky, saffron-robed monks snaked their way along the jungle path to Marley's enclosure. And I thought, well, that's what I've got to draw. There's nothing else it can be. And in the end, I just had to just sit down and do it and just keep working and working and drafting and drafting and drafting until I got it right. And to be honest, that's now one of my favourite illustrations in the book, but it's the one that I actually worked the hardest over. So, but yeah, it's definitely, don't get things right the first time. You know, sometimes it can be a real struggle. Yeah.
Can I show my favourite illustration of
Sure.
Sally from Papa Skye? I love where he falls asleep in amongst the clouds. I just love that illustration. It's my favourite.
He looks so comfy. I think all of us have imagined sleeping on clouds, haven't we?
On clouds, yeah.
And that one was really fun to draw too. I really enjoyed working on that one. Yeah.
Thank you both. So another question is, what did you study at university to be an author or an illustrator, or it's natural talent?
Well, I did a Bachelor of Design at UniSA, and I specialised in illustration. But I think really the most important thing about the studying was it gave me time to practice. So it was a 4-year course. And, you know, a lot of illustrators haven't actually had formal study. I think it's just the important thing is just having time to practice and to try different styles, to try working in different media. And it's just that time to develop the way you do things. And copying other illustrators, I would spend a lot of time looking at books and illustrators that I admired and thinking, oh, I wonder how they got it to look that way. And then I would experiment and try different ways of working to see if I could get something to look the same way as those illustrations I admired. So, yeah, I think that's the really important thing is just the practice.
And Jane?
Well, I went to Teachers College and I actually did primary PE. It was the first year that course was there. So I did primary PE. One of the subjects I think I had to do was English, and I was really naughty and slack. Like if we had tutorials and we had to have read a novel, I never read them, and I just used to say when we're in the tutorial, I agree with what she's saying. Okay, and yeah, I agree with that and all the rest. So I was, you know, I had no interest in that. I just wanted to write my own stories. And I was always writing for the local newspapers when I went out teaching, and funny little stories. And I was writing poems and songs for teachers that were either coming or going or having birthdays and all that kind of stuff. But I actually never actually studied, you know, writing children's literature or children's story until I was probably 30 or more, where I started doing some courses at TAFE and Adelaide Uni. Yeah, so I had a very late start to the, you know, the study part of it. I think you learn more by just writing and sending off and get told it's not good enough.
Sienna from St Mary's College asks, why did you choose to be an author? But it sounds like you might have already answered that one, but if you want to just go into a little bit more detail, that'd be great.
Yeah, I guess as an adult, I was looking, because being a teacher, I was looking through bookshops and looking at picture books and thinking, you know, some of these are okay, but they're nothing flash. I think I can do better than that. And that's where that started. Like, and it wasn't as easy as I thought it was going to be. It was very, very difficult. It's very competitive. And these days, I don't think there are as many picture books being published. So it's very, very hard to get a book published. Yeah.
I think one of the reasons I started writing was I was living in Singapore for a few years when my kids were really little. And one of my first books was called The Most Beautiful Lantern, and it's about the Chinese Mid-Autumn Festival. And when my kids were really small, you know, we were seeing the way the festivals were celebrated, and I wanted to, you know, they were asking me questions, you know, about, oh, you know, why do you eat mooncakes and why are there so many lanterns around? And I thought, oh, we'll just go to a bookshop and find a book about it, and we can find out what's, you know, going on. And there weren't any books around that explained the stories behind that festival and some of the other celebrations we were seeing. And so that was what started me. I started doing a bit of research to find out, and then yeah, and then the story developed around that. So sometimes it's my curiosity that drives the story, is you know, learning about something and then wanting to, I get really excited when I learn new stuff and I want to tell everyone about it. So that's part of what drives me with my storytelling.
Yeah, it's nice to see a gap in something and then fill it with talents. So, and both of you can also answer this question from Sarah Cummings. Do you have any editing tips for young writers?
I can perhaps answer that. But before I forget, I've just remembered To Kill a Mockingbird was my favourite all-time novel. And my favourite children's picture book at the moment is Cicada by Sean Tan.
Yeah, that's lovely.
But some editing tricks we talked about a bit earlier is to read your story aloud. And I like to get kids to just face the wall and just read their story aloud, because then you can hear it and it's so much different. And the other one is to get a fresh set of eyes to look at it. So give it to someone else to read, either someone else in your class. It doesn't always have to be your teacher, it can be anyone, and see what they think about the story, because it's all about a fresh set of eyes. You've written the story, you know what you wanted to say, but maybe you haven't said it in the best way. So that's my two big editing tips.
I've got a really great question. Oh, sorry, Sally, did you want to?
No, that's all right. That's
yeah, still writing, drawing away there.
I'm just doodling.
Isaac, year 3 from Linden Park, has a really good question that I think we can all get a little bit from this. How do you deal with rejections from publishers?
Okay.
Chocolate.
Makes you feel better.
Being 101.
Okay, I'll answer that one. So at the start, I used to get really upset and think, what would they know? You know, this is the best story to ever hit their desk. And then as it went on, I just thought, okay, well, if they don't want it now, I'll make it better, I'll work on it, or I'll write something else. And then I got to think, well, at least they've read it. You know, they gave me, I don't want it, but at least someone has read it. And now I've just learnt that, okay, they don't want it. It doesn't mean it's not a good story. Maybe they've just done an elephant book, or maybe they've just filled their list for the year. And so I just have to keep writing. You know, if they don't want that story, I write another story and see if they want that one.
Okay, that's good. So just keep trying, really.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
I think really, you know, I often say that patience and persistence are more important as a writer than talent, really, because there can be you could be a really talented writer, but if you know, send off a story and it gets rejected and then you don't try again, then you're never going to get anywhere. So I think, you know, the trick to succeed as a writer is just to keep going, as you say, just to, you know, not let it get you down. I mean, it does, you know, you get a bit sad if your story is rejected, but just keep going, write the next one. You know, write more and just keep going, and that, because everybody gets rejected, everybody, you know, even the most successful writers and illustrators have been rejected, you know, some have been rejected quite a lot. You know, there's lots of stories, you know, about things like Harry Potter being rejected so many times, and there's lots of stories like that. So it's the people that succeed are the ones that just keep going. Yeah.
The other thing, I guess, too, as an author is don't try and send your work off too early, because you really have to know that this is your most perfect story, that you cannot improve it any other way before you send it off. I mean, maybe you'll then get some notes back saying you could do this or that, but you really have to be happy with it, that this is your absolute best that you've done before you send it off. Yeah. But my first book, Limpopo Lullaby, that went to 22 publishers over 2 years before that got published, accepted and published.
22.
Wow.
Yeah.
Sally, while you're just finishing that off, I'll ask you both one more question and then we might wrap it up, because it's nearly home time for our students and they're finishing up. So Sophia Lamb would like to know, I want to write a book. Do you have any tips?
Just
okay. Do it.
Yeah.
Start writing and do it, and don't stop until you're finished. And if you don't like that one, start another one and don't stop until you're finished. Or if halfway you get through, you don't like it, start another one. But you just have to write. I've got a really good thing up on my wall, and I'll read it out to you now. It's in front of my desk, like it's in front of where I'm looking now, and it says, this is how you do it. You sit down at the keyboard and you put one word after another until it's done. It's that easy and that hard.
That's great.
Yeah. So it's just about doing it.
And just getting started too, I think, is the hardest thing. Staring at the blank piece of paper or the blank computer screen, just getting started. My advice is just to start scribbling, you know, just to, whether it's drawing or writing, just getting something down. And then, you know, you can always tidy it up afterwards. I think not expecting it to be perfect the first try is really important. You know, first drafts are often messy. My first drafts of my drawings and my stories are just really messy, but it's just getting it out of your head and onto paper. So don't be afraid of making mistakes or making a mess. You can always tidy it up once it's out. But I think that can be the hardest bit, is just getting started. Yeah.
I've got another really good quote on my wall, if we got time just for me to read out 2 sentences. It says, how to be a boring bad writer. Be afraid to say anything weird or unusual. Never learn new words. Always have the television on so you cannot hear yourself think. Take the easiest path possible in writing and in life. So it's like, you know, that's how to be a boring writer.
Mm. I can't imagine trying to be creative with the television on in the background. It just
No.
Anyway, speaking of, Sally, you've been doing just that with us chatting away in the background.
Well, look, I'm almost embarrassed to show you. I've just been doodling. So I've been doing a lot of birds lately. So I've just been drawing some birds flying around in the sky. So that's, yeah.
Beautiful.
Lovely. Thank you so much for taking in us, putting you right on the spot there. So really great. Well, we might wrap up now. So Jane and Sally, it's been an absolute pleasure to chat with you this afternoon, and I hope you've enjoyed yourselves as well.
Yeah, it's been fantastic. So thank you very much. I've really enjoyed it.
Pleasure.
So I just realised what I could have done. I've got one of the original illustrations from Mama Ocean there. I should have just held that up and said, oh, this is what I've been doing while I've been sitting here. Missed opportunity. Yeah, no, thanks, Kate. That's been great.
You want to quickly go grab it and we'll have a quick look and then we'll finish up on it.
So would you have believed me if I said I just whipped that up while I was sitting?
That's just magnificent.
So that probably took me 2 weeks. That at least, yeah, just.
Is that the standard size that you use to do all of your drawings?
Pretty well, yeah. I always work a little bit larger than the finished book's going to be. So this is, yeah, about maybe 10% larger than the book is. So it'll be shrunk down a little bit to fit in the book, which tightens up all the details and things a bit. Yeah. So.
Yeah, that's a lovely way to end off. So again, thank you both very much, and hopefully we'll be in touch in the future.
Great, thank you.
Every success.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone.